Well, it's very nice to be here, and thank you everybody for coming. And so I think my claim to be here is because I have run schools. So Brighton College and Wellington College are two of the most academic schools in the country, but more important than that, they are also very broad places, and they were challenging places, interesting places to transform. And I'm now at the University of Buckingham, which is Britain's leading independent university, and I'm trying to transform that and to make that into a genuinely interesting space. That's a challenge. But the experience of running schools, and both those schools had young people from the ages of 3 up to 18, and now I have students from 18 up to my oldest is 92. It gives you a sense about what education is for. And so I'm not coming at this from the perspective of an ed tech person or an academic who spent his life in AI or in computing. I come to this from the experience of somebody who has taught, run institutions, run research programs, founded academic journals, has a deep interest in my own subject, which is contemporary history. I'm the historian of number 10 Downing Street. And so all the way through up to high-level research, what is education and how might AI help or hinder that? Now, the talk that I've got today, I tried to cut it back. Normally, I give it, not that I've given it that often. There are about 90 slides, and I have half an hour, which means 20 seconds for each slide, and I've used up 1 minute 40 seconds already. So that's taking it down to about 18 seconds a slide. Nevertheless, it will give you a sense of what I'm talking about in the book. The book is called The Fourth Education Revolution, and I am deeply interested in history. I'm deeply interested in what education is. I'm deeply uninterested in what most practitioners at schools and universities think education is. So that's where I'm coming from. The book itself, profits from it are going to the Joe Cox Foundation. Joe Cox was murdered by fascists during the referendum campaign in 2016. It's the second book I've dedicated the money to Joe. Right, so the story, AI, and how important is it? And there is Carl Benz, and I'm saying that AI is as important as the discovery of the internal combustion engine, and we are discovered in 1886, and this is a picture from the book, image from the book. We are about in the equivalent of about 1889. That AI is going to change the world more than the car has done, and we don't yet begin to realize that. We haven't yet begun to see it. So that's another image from the book, and you can see that there, and you can all read it. And the subtitle of the book and my work is, Will AI Infantilise or Liberate Humanity? And I'll explain that more clearly as we go through. And AI, we've just had somebody very prominent today saying that it is the most important development in the history of humanity. There's Stephen Hawking in the first paragraph hedging his bets just a little bit. I mean, there's leaves a certain amount of space between it being the best or the worst thing, or somewhere in between. And there's Musk, but you all know that. So the the fourth education revolution, the AI revolution, is as important as the three earlier revolutions. Very simply, one was 5 million years ago, one 5,000 years ago, one 500 years ago. And they were 5 million years ago the beginning of learning from each other. Learning about clothes, learning about making food, hunting, implements, weapons. The second 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, now humankind has settled down on the banks of 4 rivers, is no longer moving around, is settled in communities, and it's the beginning of organized education, passing down the knowledge that one needs to have to understand how to live in civil societies. That was Nineveh, by the way. You'd recognize that. And the first university, Bologna, in that time. The third revolution, the beginning of 500 years ago, roughly, the beginning of mass education. So Revolution 1, beginning of education, 5 million, 5,000, the beginning of organized education, and then the beginning of mass education, reaching its high point in industrialized communities. And we still have this factory model of education there, still fundamentally the same in our schools. And with, in fact, look at the way that I'm talking to you now. As in 1600, teachers at the front, delegates in rows, teacher exposition, writing on the board, or PowerPoint at the front of class, homework, that comes later, exams, marking grades, rankings, reports, etc. Until this. And it's already transforming, as we know. AI, digital healthcare, transport, shopping, law firms, accountancy, agriculture, we go on and on, banking. British government understands, it's really good, and understands the impact of all that on that, but it fails to understand the impact of AI on education. And troubling, it gets angry when you point that out to it. As people do when they are wrong, and you point out they're never more angry. It's always a measure of how right something is by how angry people are when you point that out to them. And on the jobs, they don't understand the impact of the jobs on which we're educating young people for, and on the kinds of skills the young need to cope. So what our schools are not, why are they not doing an even better job? Why are they not doing an even better job? Because I think our ministers, officials, MAT, that's multi-academy trust, and local authority leaders, education departments, universities, education experts are influenced overwhelmingly and without fully acknowledging it by that. Not that. So there are very quickly 5 intractable problems with the factory model, which nobody was able to cure. It could be cured for a short period, London challenge, schools, it could be for a short period, but not enduringly anywhere in the world. Did the factory model, that's the third education revolution model, or will be swept away in the fourth education revolution. And the first was the failure to achieve social mobility. The world over, communist, whatever kind of society you're talking about, whatever degree of affluence, whatever degree of technological sophistication, the elites come to the top and get the best jobs, go to the best universities. That is a picture that you all know well, showing how little things have changed in 85 years. Secondly, it has failed to cope with the fact that children, young people, students, university students learn at different speeds in different ways in different subjects. And there is that sense in the factory model that you all move forward on the 1st of September, i.e. 4 days ago, you move forward up to a next level, and everybody in that level is capable of the same level of cognitive emotional understanding, and in every single subject that you're going to be taught. Now, setting and streaming compensated a bit for that, but not very significantly. And patently one size doesn't fit all. Another cliche photograph, but making that point. What with third problem? A third enduring problem. You can just teasing them out of your own minds with the factory model, just try and work them out yourselves before. By the way, this is what I'm doing there is trying to show a problem with the factory model, which was we told in our universities and schools people the answers before we allowed them to work them out for themselves. Where you tell somebody the answer, it's always the domain of the teacher or the textbook or the piece of software, not the students themselves. Teachers drowned out by administration. You, of course, would have guessed and seen that one is the third enduring problem. So with every September, schools the world over, so I'm going to come on to universities in a moment, start their academic year with promises of the latest technology, which teachers are told will make their job at last easier, and they can spend more time teaching, and traditionally year after year that does not happen. And burnout is very troubling and worrying. Up to half teachers leaving schools within 5 years of taking over. A narrow focus on just cognitive ability. I'm going to come and just say a word about intelligence in a moment, because all of this goes down to what we mean by an intelligent person. There is an incredibly intelligent person who is obviously very unintelligent. Do you see a highly intelligent person, or do you see a highly stupid person? Homogenization, the factory model was interested in students giving the right answer in the right way at the right time. It wasn't interested in their answer. And one of the big factors in the growth of mental health is that so many students don't know who they are. What is the point of getting 5 A stars and getting into Cambridge if you have a breakdown in your first term? Where is the intelligence in having a breakdown? How is that intelligent? Where is the intelligence in the academics who drive their students to more and more greater endeavour? Where is their intelligence when neither they nor their students are living, or might not be living, psychologically healthy lives? So the system homogenizes, it doesn't individuate. It doesn't help young people know who they are. It's not interested in who they are, what their answers are. It's interested in the right answer. Okay, so AI addressed all those problems. Social mobility by an Eton education for all, because the technology is going to be so clever, so advanced, it's going to know every student. It carries on with you year after year. It knows your sense of humour, students' sense of humour. It knows when they are losing attention, knows how to get them back onto mission. It knows how to constantly be challenging them just beyond the level of difficulty at which they feel comfortable. Stage not aged by personalised. Learning for every single teacher. The admin the burden is going to be massively transformed and eased. We will learn across all 8 intelligences, more on that in a moment. And there'll be the scope for each child to develop and individuate. I know I'm going quickly. At the moment, our schools are, is this man knocking our schools and universities? No, I'm not. We're preparing students brilliantly. So what are they for? And that's a really important question. And those of you who have children might well, and not just if you have children, and not necessarily because you have children, but might well come back and ask again, hang on, what is all this about? Where is the standing back and thinking, what is all of this for? Well, preparing students for university, about half of them, definitely. Preparing them for the world of work, probably 100% of them. Preparing students for life, certainly up there 100%. Family, the great majority. preparing students for meaning and happiness. We might say that an intelligent life, an intelligent education would be about preparing people for all of this, not just helping the academic develop more their own particular niche field. What kind of intelligence are we developing? So very quickly, what is intelligence? The third factory model had a very narrow, mean and limiting understanding, totally out of date by 2018, defined here, the University of Breslau, IQ test, well, other places too, but this is one of the prominent ones, and they were astonished to find who came top of their intelligence tests. These were the first tests designed to grade people by saying, you are intelligent, you are not intelligent. You are better than you are less good than this person. Who came top of their intelligence test? They were amazed. They couldn't believe it. They were so thrilled and excited and a little bit flattered. They found that the people who came top were people like them. Who would have thought that, hey? Male, middle class, cognitive, left brain thinkers and more. Astonishing. And it wouldn't have mattered if 106 years of education worldwide wasn't based fundamentally on their approach. 8 kinds of intelligence, 2 sets of pairs, logical and linguistic. This is what we should be developing. Education means drawing out all these potentialities are there within people. The social intelligence and the personal intelligence, which means the intelligence to lead a happy life, a life not plagued by mental illness. Think about it. Moral intelligence, the ability to know the difference between right and wrong, and spiritual intelligence, so much reviled by academics who can find no spiritual depth in their own left-brain cognitive worldview and do not understand that the world is bigger than what goes on in the dreams of their own minds. Physical and cultural. And these 8 potentialities are all there within all of us, and they need to be developed and weren't well enough developed in that third education revolution model. Who had the most developed? Those who attended the elite state and independent schools the world over. The schools I've seen that are the most unfair are in China, where the state system ensures that the top party officials and the richest children. So it's nothing to do, I'm afraid. It's tempting to think it's all about liberal capitalist democracy, but it's not. Okay, so we're not even preparing our students well enough for the world of work. Study after study after study, and most recently this one you'll all be aware of, and there have been more showing that we are preparing people for a world which is no longer there. The very skills that we emphasize in our exams are the very ones that AI and algorithms will always be able to do much better. And we're not doing well enough on those that are not. So, while we're distinguishing their quality and quantity of work, okay, so I think this AI revolution, some of the guys in my university, they are guys who think this, I think that it is all a load of bunk and the market, so it's just endlessly going to provide new jobs. I'm not sure. I am not sure. And if there are, it may be there'll be the quantity of jobs, but the quality of jobs. Look at what's happening in driving, look at what's happening to the satisfaction of discovering how to get from A to B, look at how sat-nav has robbed many people of the joy of reading maps, and potential dangers, infantilization of students and teachers. This profession simply can become unworthwhile. The focus is on information, not understanding or wisdom. Homogenization and lack of diversity. Students no longer learn facts but rely on machines. And we all, we do that, don't we? Already. So is AI going to replace the factory model of the third education revolution model by which marginalized the many by a sat-nav model that dehumanizes the many? So that's the question. So we need to focus. I'm going to go very quickly now. This is what I think they need to show you those. That's what I think they need to do. And so the fourth education, will it liberate or infantilise? Liberate because it will allow us to overcome those 5 intractable problems as I defined there of the third education revolution model, that no schools or school systems in a sustained period of time could overcome. Well, you'll be familiar with these, so I don't think I need to talk about those. Neither do I think I need to talk about the singularity. We've got already machines planning and marking work, rolling out the curriculum, speech recognition, generation, empathetic tailored responses, comprehensive understanding of individual learning needs. That's already happening. Machines are beginning to transform the administration. So what is happening in our schools? And this is the first of 2 diagrams I put up in Downing Street almost 6 years ago for a seminar when I was asked to talk about how at that time I saw digitalisation changing schools and universities. I got a similar one on universities. And green is those areas where already by 6 years ago there was a heavy impact made from digitalisation, and red little, and orange some. So already lessons in school were being affected, libraries beginning to be affected, exams and tests ditto. The areas that weren't were pastoral care, and then below the line, which is the softer part, the broader benefits of school life as opposed to the academic core, which is above that journey line from year 1 to year 13. Social life, no. Co-curricular just beginning to be transformed, skills a bit, and of course massive changes in admin and communications. So if you look at what the 5 levels of teaching are, AI is going to make, that's what the teachers do. Someone who's a brilliant teacher will be able to do all those things in a very gifted way. AI will make a huge difference, impact on all of those 5 separate activities, which I have observed over 30 years in schools and to a significant extent in universities, is the nature of what's happening. Harbingers of the future, just looking at these in schools, the alt schools, Summit public schools, there are 5 of these, the School of One in Cleveland, the Khan Lab School, different from Khan Academy, and Riverbend in Chennai, India. They are, the students arrive in the morning, they have their playlist that's going to be going through with them what they're going to be studying during that day in all of their subjects. They will have, it will be personalised for them, and they will spend much less of their time studying, because compared to, on average, 20 to 1 maybe in an independent school, 30 to 1 maybe, a bit less, bit more in state schools worldwide, it's 1 to 1. The learning is much quicker and more effective. The technology is also with the students at home in the evening, at weekends and holiday times. It's always there for them to be developing at their own pace, in their own speed, with the teacher who deeply understands them, their learning difficulties, their motivations, their emotional responses. And the great thing about, one of the great things is that the teacher doesn't disappear. I mean, I'm sure all of us here would have had an experience where we really liked and thought we made great progress at, say, chemistry at the end of year 9, and then at year 10 we went on and we had a different chemistry teacher, and suddenly we found the subject much more difficult. Here that will not happen, because the learner will just keep going all the way through. So this just sums it up there before I go on to universities. We need AI machines to teach our students to become more fully human. The education system currently all too often deploys humans to teach our young to become more like machines. Okay, so there we are there. The material, I'm going to just finish it there, because I think the... so if we just turn that off there, and then we'll just go into questions. There's a lot I could say about universities, but I won't. So how long was that on time?
That was fine.
Okay. Questions, please, there on any of these aspects. And what, just can I say on universities, what I'd pick out would be so I did a similar path. These are all in the book that shows what's the nature of the student journey through university, above the line, below the line. What are the pressures already? Where are the most innovative developments happening in universities? Will they survive? How will they optimally survive? How will the HE sector landscape be very different, and research in 25 years? And okay, let's go through the questions. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to just pick up on this picture, not just because
yeah.
it's in front of us. So the analogy that you draw is a really interesting one. The point about future rather than the past, fair enough. I mean, I sort of know that you don't really think that, but I take the point. You being a historian. That same case was used by a guy called David Collingridge in a wonderful book, which was all about how you might take better control of the future. He said that where we were with computers in 1980 was where we were with cars in 1908. So the date was different, but the time was the same. What you have done, which is very different from what Collingridge did, is take the future for granted, seemingly. That you have borrowed an idea of what AI is that seems quite fixed. Do you think, have I characterised that fairly?
No, why do you, no, I'm interested. I'm not saying you're right or wrong, but I just curious why you think I have a fixed idea about AI.
It seems to be that you don't question what AI might become, the various different trajectories that AI might take.
Well, I do in the book and haven't here. The subtitle is saying, is this going to infantilize or liberate us? Is this going to allow us to become more fully human? The education process, which I think has been comparatively shallow, to become much more profound. So I'm posing the question constantly, what can we be doing to ensure that the very best outcome happens rather than the worst? That's what I'm trying to do.
It just seems, so when you say whether it will liberate or infantilize, is your it fixed?
We don't know the future. We can see harbingers, obviously, of the future were our school leaders to go out and to look at these schools that were abroad. Had I had more time to go through the universities, I'm going up tonight to a meeting of Vice-Chancellors at Sheffield, had they more time deeply, not just on their screens, but deeply to visit and see what's happening in some of the most innovative universities worldwide, I think the future is happening in those places. And I have a fairly clear sense that this technology is going to come and will take over our schools. What I don't know, and I think it will help enormously in teaching, particularly in deprived areas of the country, particularly in deprived areas of the world, particularly in subjects where teachers are hard to recruit, specialist teachers like in maths and science. So I think that it will make an enormous impact. What I don't know, what I'm constantly asking and probing away at, is how are we going to ensure, who can we trust to ensure that it is in the interests of all rather than the interests of the tech companies. So I look at who and look at the various possibilities of the people who are in charge of the way this is going to develop, and various scenarios about what might develop in chapters 8, 9 and 10. And yeah, I'm skeptical about the big tech companies. I'm significantly worried that the interests of the very small minority are not going to squeeze out the interests of the majority in terms of quality of life. I'm sure that some people are going to do very nicely indeed, thank you very much, out of this. I'm trying to look at how, in the interests of the Joe Cox, the interests of the less privileged, who didn't get a good deal out of the third education revolution model, that they will get a much better deal out of what can be and should be profoundly liberating technology. So that's the book. It's hard to encompass that. But come back, now you know more of the thesis, come back and I didn't, by the way, know that analogy there, that other car analogy. Good, better than mine. So come back and hit me with more, now or later. Yeah, gentleman here.
I completely agree with the reply you've just given, and I really, want to support the idea of trying to get some better education to those who've had a really poor one. But at the end of the day, I fundamentally disagree with your definition of education. I think education is about demonstrating to those who want to learn the importance of knowledge, and to inspire in them a love for ongoing learning. And I don't believe that a machine can ever do that. That's the world of a inspired teacher. The machine is just not in the same ballpark at all.
Can I just ask, but you don't have to answer, what your life experience has been?
How long are you giving me? I've spent the last 30 years as a university teacher.
Right. I'd like to think you're right, my heart, but my head
Well, there are many bad teachers.
Suggests that that you are wrong. That coming back to the Carl Benz analogy, the technology that we have at the moment that's working in schools and in universities with students is a tenth, a hundredth, a thousandth as sophisticated as it will become. And already students are finding the evidence, I'm sure it needs more scientific probing, that the learning on a one-to-one basis of, for example, mathematics is quicker than in a class, because the machine is able to look at the face of the student, listen to its voice, and to be constantly adapting the material that it's putting over. I do not think that it will mean that we need less teachers. I think it means that we will, if anything, need more teachers and more teaching assistants. I'm very clear about that. That is one of the things I'm very clear about. But I think that the experience of these machines already is showing, and not just in cognitive learning, but also in emotional learning, that some students find the engagement with a machine voice more helpful than talking to a human face. And that's both worrying, and I think it's more worrying perhaps, but these are just value judgments. It's what appears to be happening. So this is very early stages. I'm skeptical of some of the research findings about the speed at which students are learning guided by machine learning technology, but I am convinced that it's going to get considerably better very quickly and better able to adapt to each and every student. I think the human is always going to be necessary in addition, but this will be a facilitator, compensating significantly for the fact that in certain parts of the country, certain parts of the world, certain academic specialisms, there will never be enough specialist teachers to give that more one-on-one learning which this technology promises. So let's meet again in 10 years and see whether you're right or whether I'm right. I hope that you're right, that there is something that is special about the being in the same breath space, human contact space. There's something there. Why do we want to go and see theatre when we can watch films, to see matches when we can see it better on television?
want to meet people when we have been able for 130 years to telephone them. There is something that is clearly special about that space, and yet, this technology is already very good and is about to get very significantly much better. I'm going to come back and I'll come back to, on this topic, and we'll come back in 10 years on that one. Yeah, okay.
So I agree with you that it's really important about the whole other aspects of our life.
Yeah.
But the huge part of them actually is communicating between humans. So can you give a specific example how teaching by machine can be better in teaching you how to interact with people than interacting with people?
So yesterday I was teaching on an inset day, which is the in-service training day schools have before, and I was talking to 150 teachers at a London school. One had just come back from India, and they where they'd worked for 4 weeks in a school, and they said how frightening it was by how utterly mechanical and regimented and transactional the school was. So if you imagine that schools are full of I'm trying to get to the humanity. What is it? How can we stress the human? I'm constantly probing away in the book, and have all kinds of ideas for making schools and universities more fully human. But to imagine that schools are full of empathetic teachers who have the time as well as the inclination as well as the capability to engage with students, rather than see it as a transactional process of saying and exam league tables the world over have a very direct responsibility for damaging the quality of education, whereby we don't teach geography, we teach geography GCSE, or we don't teach physics, we teach physics A-level, and that means from the first lesson the students are told in too many schools, you need to know this to answer question 1 to get the most marks. You need to be able to, in your first sentence, to say this. So I think we're not looking at a perfect example of empathetic, human centered schools. Schools have been dehumanized, stripped of their emotion by the need to take part in this dance of exam factory league table. Now, they're also full of individual compassionate teachers. Notice how many of those. It would be great to see a study of the up to 50% of new teachers who leave the profession within 5 years. Do you imagine that they are disproportionately the cold teachers who are the ones who actually the system is much better geared for, or those who are more sensitive, who feel that what's brought them into teaching hasn't been nourished by the reality of what's happening in schools today. So I'm just saying that it isn't far from perfect. Then I could say, but I think I've already made the point, how well and how subtle these teachers are at individuating themselves to the emotional, psychological, cognitive needs of each and every student and in each and every subject. We'll come back. I'm not convinced you, but we'll come back. I don't think I'm convincing anybody here at all. Should take the question at the top and then here, and then we just take those the last few. How long have I got? 2 minutes.
You have as long as you want, but you want to leave.
Well, yeah, but only I only leaving because you said that. I had that time for the talk, and I don't want to overrun. Should we just take everyone's? I'll just write a note down of what you're saying. Just take the questions. I'll just come back if I can just have a piece of paper. So question at the back, and then we're just going to come, lady here, and then gentleman here.
It's for me to say anything because I'm just meant to be here filming it.
Well, quite. That's just what I was thinking. I mean,
Someone who is in university currently and is doing sport.
Yeah.
I don't believe that artificial intelligence could have, articulated all of what you just said in that presentation as well as you have.
Well, that's a fine. Okay. Yep. Good.
Trying to convince me that a computer is convincing people, could convince people, I wouldn't be convinced.
And I second that motion.
So I lose both ways there. I'll win both ways. Yeah. Okay. Good.
After hearing you stand there and say all this, I kind of want to hear like more of what you have to say. I kind of want to see what more subjects you
Okay,
think
I thumped it down very quickly.
isn't going to be interesting enough to like go and look into.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, just remind me of your name.
Joe.
Joe, the significant news is that I am a computer. Or, put it this way, prove that I'm not. Yes.
I'm exploring with universities and schools around AI, and one of the projects I've just done is with about 50 teams of school children,
Yeah.
asking them where they're going to use AI in the future. Now, the outcome was that a large proportion of them were designing systems that would make life easier for them, that would remove any of this sort of tedious work. What I found most interesting about this exercise was that they didn't really comfortably describe the future. They found it very, very difficult to describe the future. And I'm curious about creativity, and I'm curious about how do you help young people really formulate some idea about what the future is in order that they can actually prepare themselves. So I'm curious to hear what you think.
Okay. Thank you. And just any other questions here? And there's one here, and then probably call it a day. Yes.
Something to follow up what Joe said and to hear a couple of things. First, thank you very much for the great presentation. This, what I'm going to say, comes from my undergraduate student thesis. He was doing his thesis on how software can help people with their different issues. And one of the issues was educational problems. So he concluded that if students have problems with maths, for example, and it's not enough for them what they have in classroom, they can go home, use software to even out their knowledge, and then in classroom they not feel behind. They can be even peers. So I think this helps them as well to feel, be better colleagues, because they're not feeling worse. But it not replace a teacher, it just gives this individual support for this special needs. So these both things could work perfectly together.
Okay. And so I just say that, and was that adaptive technology or just flat technology? Was it AI technology that they were using?
I think there could be possibly mixed one, not really sure.
Okay. All right. Well, okay, very good. Yes.
From Royal Holloway, University of London. I think that you took personalization and adaptation for granted to be a good thing. And personalization and adaptation means some sort of profiling for people, for students. And we need to ask deep questions about what sort of profiling are we accepting for students.
What kind of
profiling.
Right.
So we need to profile in order to provide this personalized service for the education. So what is the logic behind this personalization and profiling? And this is a technical issue, but also it is a value issue. So
Yes.
I think this is a big debate that we need to initiate. What sort of profiling we will accept as a society and why? Because you could accept, for example, designing a system for students who are low achievers, only to give them little bits by little bits, bytes by bytes, so they will be always low achievers. You are not inspiring students, you are not stretching them in any ways or forms. And this is one way of profiling it. So I think that this idea of personalization and adaptation, it needs much more debate than that.
Yeah. Well, I think my just comment there would be that I completely agree, and there is quite a lot of work going on, but I'd like to see a lot more on the impact of AI in education. I would be, if I was in charge of the Research Council's piling a lot more money into this area in general, but specifically I see AI as the Cinderella of education, as the Cinderella of the whole AI tech. You know, just there's less thinking. I mean, there's some thinking going on, but not nearly as much as there ought to be, because the time horizon of governments is so short. They can see the impact much more clearly of money going to AI in other areas. In education, they're told that the impact will be decades away, and even then it's unproven. So I would like to see much more. I completely agree with you. There was one last question, I think, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true or just fake news, but I've heard that Silicon Valley professionals, they send their children to non-tech schools.
To
Schools where there is no tech, no...
Yeah.
So let's imagine it's true. What does it mean?
The leaders, and I think it's an interesting question about whether that is correct. Certainly, I've seen stories online of the leaders of AI, MR, AR, VR, etc., having regimes at homes where there is no technology and sending their children to schools which have no technology. I think, I don't know if it's true or false, but I think it would be wrong of them to do that. The technology is a neutral, and what we need to be doing is to help our young people learn how to use it well. As a head teacher, I would always worry a bit, admire, but worry a bit about those parents who said, we don't have any television in our home, because when those people leave home and go to university or further education or into work at the age of 18, they haven't developed the ability to know how to be discriminating. So if it is true or not true, I think is less important than the fact that they need to be teaching their children how to discriminate from what is good and what is bad use of technology, so they can be the masters of the technology, not mastered by it, would be my answer to that. There are so many great questions here. There's so little time. I'm merely going to say that the response about what it means to be human, it is worrying. We have a session at tomorrow morning for Vice-Chancellors about the numbers of suicides at university amongst young people. It appears that high cognitive intelligence is no guarantee of not being able to experience profound despair. That there is a malaise amongst young people. The data out last week was very frightening, about 1 in 4 girls self-harming. That the technology seems to be contributing significantly towards that, and a common factor is a lack of ability for young people to reside within their own skin and to feel contained in their own selfhood. That is one reason why I am a profound advocate of not popular in many circles, but mindfulness, because mindfulness gives us the ability to feel at one within our own skin. It's the equivalent to giving our brains a deep bath. When you've been through mindfulness, if it goes well, as to other contemplative experiences, it just helps one to reset one's dials and to get in touch with the sense of who one is. And just another point about the technology, and we're in early days, yet we don't know where the destination is. We don't know who is going to do well out of this. We don't even know. The optimists think this is all overloaded talk, and this will just be another revolution like every others, and life is going to carry on much as before. Well, maybe. I think they're wrong, but we certainly need to respect their reasons for saying it. But one reason why I think the technology is going to be more helpful than can often be the case in lessons is that so much of learning in schools, less so true in university, but still to some extent in university, is based upon this acquisition of the right answer. So if, for example, we are studying the Battle of Britain, and that is part of GCSE, the exam that 16-year-olds take, they learn what the right answers are. The technology would allow them, so they know what the German High Command did, what the response from the British RAF Air Force was, what happened, how many were killed on all these days. And what the technology allows one to do is to say, well, and one can do exactly the same with scientific experiments by changing the numbers. The Germans were here, they had this number of planes, the British were here. Had you been the British, how would you have best responded to that? How would you have used your resources? What would have been your tactics? And if you change this, what would change over there? It allows young people to become more active learners, because what is given to one, so much of school, a principal reason why it can be dull and disappointing, maybe not in your experiences, but in the experiences of far too many young people, is they are told the answers. They're not allowed the time. Why not? Not because teachers are unkind or malign, though some undoubtedly will be, but in the greatest majority of cases because there's no time to do it, with the pressure on the curriculum, the pressure on the time to do it, whereas machines will have far more time to encourage active learning. And it's precisely that active learning that I think is the biggest single factor that we need to have more in our education system, because if we are to be able to use AI technology rather than to be rendered useful idiots to it in a world where our decisions about what we eat, who we're friendly with, where we're going to spend our free time, what we're going to read is decided by machines that know our minds infinitely better than we do. We need to develop efficacy and active decision-making amongst our young people, rather than the passive model which far too much of the education system is currently based upon. And I would just say, I've raced through that, cantered through it too quickly, and not done nearly as good a job for you as I would like to have done. I can say this because I'm not going to benefit from the book, and anyway, I think it's only £10, but the book does set it out. It is, and the profits do go to where I said they will. It is a debate. I'd love to hear back from you. I've just laid it out as I think that the facts are leading me to suggest it is the way that life will go. But things are so much up for grabs. Will all this liberate humanity, particularly the less advantaged, to live lives of greater enrichment and fullness in school, in university, if they go and beyond, or will it actually infantilise us and make that which makes life worth living no longer there? So that's it. Thank you very much.